Say that question again.
What's the difference between equity and equality? Guesses, ideas, notions on it? Sure.
Equality means you start with the capability of being able to have access to everything, where equity is you gain everything all the time.
I think that's a fantastic way to put it. And you know what I'll add to that is that really you're talking about where we start and what
I'm assuming he's worked as old, nearly as old as I am. And he can confirm that. I've been a fan of this play through the musical, actually, since I was in college. And that was like 50 years ago. And I've wanted to see this play. And this is I'm seeing it tonight. So I'm like very excited. This is the first time I've seen a play that I've followed and been aware of and wanted to see for 50 years. I'm trying to some ideas about, or maybe you can correct some of my failure. I've wondered why this play isn't at the forefront of plays that are done. Why is it's taking me 50 years to find a production of it? Thank you, Galveston, Texas. Thank you, Lighthouse. Thank you, Sam. Whoever else brought this out. Thank you. But why is it taking that long? I guess the musical, I would say, has a little bit more exposure to good revival of that. Some, but not broadly. I don't think.
Last year, the show was record like last year.
I'm not even aware of that, but that's pretty minimal in my viewpoint for play. It's first hit was 63 to play. 61. Yeah. Then the musical about 10 years later.
It's a little long now,
I mean, the musical, if you haven't ever heard the music, you get that. And it's like driving down the road, singing hallelujah all day. And do you have any observation about why not more of this play?
Absolutely, like I have multiple of them. I mean, the first is Broadway's a business. That's the very first, right? And there's lots of debate now about what we see staged and why we see it staged and who's making money on it and who isn't. So, it's always a money game. It's a money game then. I think, and if you read some of the reviews like I did of the stage plays debut, there are a lot of people who were very uncomfortable. There's one, I cited that in an essay, where he says, I really dislike watching this because it's filled with stereotypes and the NAACP tells me it didn't exist. So there's so many things that I would take issue with in a statement like that, but think about the level of comfort and then think about who is going to fund a show like that, right? So that's why I think there's this long period of time where we see stage on Broadway, and then I think we also have to be aware of what's the social context for it coming back right now. What are people thinking about? And that doesn't have to be in a negative way necessarily, but these things are at the surface right now. These sorts of issues are really at the surface right now, at the heart of what's going on in the country. And so it's a great time to make money doing something like that. Sounds cynical, but I think that's part of it. I think the other thing is people are just afraid to stage something like that. So where you do see it, it's in community theaters. It's in this kind of space, right? It's sort of a grassroots thing. Lots of HBCUs with this on, right? But you don't see it at that stage, I think, largely. And how it might be received. People are, you gotta make money. And there's more tried and true things that speak to the same issue, because how many revivals have we had of
But when we started reading that script, people's eyes started getting big. And certain things, people are like, they're just and all of a sudden, I see, Paul's head kind of go down. Say that, because it is, to see what you're saying about Davis, and speaking what you're saying, Kim, I have had this conversation with probably 40 community members in Galveston. Why isn't this done commonly? You and I both work on community theaters. We have been for years and years. It's like, why? Why be scared of something? It's a comedy. It's a satire. It's funny. You're going to laugh your butt off tonight. However, it's that fear of the unknown. It's that fear of how are people going to take this. I'm not going to lie. Opening night, and you know how I get, how nervous I get, and I hate talking about people. But opening night, this entire cast, everyone was like, oh, okay, you're fine, because I was just a ball of nervous energy, because there were so many dignitaries and whatnot of Galveston that were here opening night. All of our underwriters were like, oh my God, this show has so many racist spots, and it's all, it's all this big satire. It's just almost farcical, like, and I'm like, oh my God, are people gonna look at me and they're like, why did this white boy direct this play? I mean, why did he pick this? But then it dawned on me, because we as a united family with our theater and what we have become, it's so relative and it is so valid that we did this together, we did this in this space for this holiday to bring attention to the topic, right? To bring attention to the show. Now yes, God willing, tomorrow she takes home all 6 Tonys, and I really hope that she does, and we're going to pray for that. But I feel like the reason why, and y'all can speak up on this as well, I feel like the reason why this is not commonly done, like the piano lesson, or To Kill a Mockingbird, like Crystal said, or A Raisin in the Sun, Hairspray even. This was not done because of the unknown and the uncomfortability of doing the show. Having a group of actors and directorial staff and everything else that are willing to be tested with it and put themselves out on Front Street on behalf of the show. I will tell you, you've known me since I was a little boy. Doing this show, this has been so extremely fulfilling on an emotional level, like a spiritual level, not even to sound funny because the show has so many religious effects to it. But it's almost like cleansing to do this show, where I feel like, and I'm always saying that we as a group almost on individual levels, but as a group together, it's almost like we have a sense of clarity that we did before. And it was all done through a play. And I mean, that's something I'll tell you, you have to recognize I will campaign for the show. Because it's just a good time. It teaches people to just loosen up. And that's my favorite quote from that script, Dr. Davis, that is on the cover of the script. And I meant to read it in my current speech, but I feel so off frame when I'm like, well, I just forget. But Ossie wrote this beautiful excerpt of talking about what this show is, what the meaning of it is, and the final line of that is above all other things, the one thing that unites culture, unites race, color, creed, is through laughter. And he wanted to tell this story of a very serious topic in the funniest way possible. And I think this script does it itself. But I absolutely agree with you. I don't know why it shows that more. I feel like it should be done more. A lot of these things should be done more. I'm going to shut up and talk.
I think it's harder for pastors to be so vulnerable and then to be able to it's probably a hard period.
Oh, I had second thoughts on when I got the phone call from the staff saying, hey, I'm off the road, I was a little quiet on the phone for 2 seconds. I was like, oh, my black card doing these things. But it's that moment of, as an artist, you can put yourself in an uncomfortable position in order to get to the meat of what the art really is. This show is so beautiful. It is so beautiful. And it's through the comedy and the satirical aspect of this entire show that we get a true message, which we as a whole cast can kind of figure that out as a family. We have to come together and figure out, okay, well, yeah, it's pretty racist. It's a pretty racial focus here. But let's look further beyond it. Let's deeper than that. And I think as an audience, and as theater goers, who create theater,
And you see all these different interpretations of the show, and I've seen all these characters been brought forth in very different ways. I'm curious as to when you were putting the material and knowing that back then there probably wasn't all the recordings online and you weren't able to see all these things, what character or what relationship really impacted you the most? For me personally, it's really Idella and Charlie. I'm a biracial woman that looks very, very white, and I unfortunately have seen and heard a lot of the terrible, terrible things that even spoken about my own family, and they think it's okay to say in front of me because I look the part. So seeing Idella and Charlie and seeing that mother-son bond between them and knowing the conviction that Charlie had, I really saw myself and my friends and my friends' parents in that role. I wonder what role really impacted you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me say something very quickly about that relationship. Is that I think what's interesting about that particular relationship is that we see it's a relationship we see over and over represented in popular culture, and it's usually not in a positive way. And I mean that in terms of it shows a kind of deference, sort of, this is a family member, but I don't even think of him as human, right? Kind of way that's what we're accustomed to. And I think what this does, and this is to his genius, Idella is a fully conceived character, right? Like she signals some of those things that we're familiar with, but she's telling Charlie what to do. She's telling him how he should be thinking. She's telling him, and we're rapping about masculinity, but she's telling him how to be a man, right? She's telling him that these are the things that you need to do, and you need to have integrity. So I think that's a really powerful relationship. But for me personally, it's really about and the work that I see her doing, and I did struggle in some ways in this way, just around gender and gender roles and what it says broadly about family relationships. And yet I also, given the context for when it was made, I get it, right? But I think what happens there, her being able to think of herself in a different way, and even though ultimately that really falls through, what does she believe in, and who does she believe as, right? Who does she believe that way? Very different from what we see today. So, for me, that kind of transformation, I think, is powerful, especially around Black women, because there are sometimes representations of Black women that impose a superwoman kind of, it shows soft, it shows that she's fallible, it shows, you know what I mean? So I think that's important. And again, to see that we went to 1961, we don't see those representations that much now of complex Black women. So, I think that's important. Sorry, that helped me too.
No, I love that because I sit backstage and I'm watching everyone and I watch how they develop these characters, and because I'm listening to it over and over again, you get to, and I'm sure you've probably read it 8 times over, the more you read it, the more you kind of figure out, and not to give anything away, but at the top of the show, when Lou Bell is talking to Missy for the first time, she goes, oh no, you can call me Aunt Missy. She goes, okay, Aunt Missy, and she falls into that place so easily, and in my eyes, I see that as because she was constantly doing that. She was constantly, here's the next person in charge, here's the next person in charge. And it's not until she gets to Missy and she realizes, wait, I can stay here, that then she can take who she is and really mold herself.
Absolutely, 1,000%. And again, whatever we think about heteronormative relationship, but that is what she decides for her, right? It's what she wants. We can talk about her things outside of the school, but she's making decisions for herself. So I think that is fantastic. And again, it's not something that I think we see a whole lot of now. I mean, even in, and I love
end up like that. Now, my question, totally making this, how many production